Hi everybody. Another little quick hitter. We're going to start calling these things you've never heard before, which is pretty much everything I say. Polyps. This is going to be a quick one. Don't blink. Polyps. You're scared of polyps. You're afraid to go have that colonoscopy. The doctor says there's a couple of polyps in there. Scared to death, right? Well, you don't understand. Your doctor doesn't understand what a polyp is. It's a callus. So here you are. You don't have enough mucosal lining. That means that Vaseline that is supposed to be covering, Vaseline-like stuff that's supposed to be covering every bit of your GI tract to protect it against what? Your own stomach acids. And also I talked earlier about fiber. You know, people, I said don't eat fiber when you have an inflammatory bowel. And when do you have inflammatory bowel? When you don't have enough mucosal lining. So getting back to what a polyp is. You have some tissue that's exposed, no mucosal lining. Why? Well, you must have had some antibiotics at some point prior. Could have been when you were 2 years old, 10 years old. An antibiotic does a lot of good things, but it's the only drug that drags out part of your anatomy with it when it leaves. You know, some drugs have a toxicity. You know, you get poisoned by it, and there can be a residue. It can be in your liver, kidneys. That's not what antibiotics do. They remove part of your anatomy, the mucosal lining. They'll take a little bit with it each time you take it, and you're left with some bare skin. So you have this colon, long tissues, long muscle, and on the inner rim there's all this tender skin. Should be covered with the mucosal lining. Parts of it aren't because you've had antibiotics at some point. So let's just say you have a little area the size of a dime, usually it's much smaller, that doesn't have enough mucosal lining or any. That tissue is now exposed to your stomach acids. Every time you swallow anything, even water, it's going to burn that tissue. What's the tissue do in some cases? Everybody's genetics perhaps is different. It forms scar tissue. What is scar tissue? Extra layers of skin. Why does it do that? Well, why does that do that on your hand when you're shoveling? To protect the underlying tissue. You'll form who knows how many 5, 10, 20 extra layers of skin. That's just there as a padding to prevent the axe handle or whatever you're using. Maybe you buy a pair of shoes and it's rubbing your back of your foot. Whenever there's a friction, there's going to be, eventually the body's going to produce the calluses. What's a polyp? It's a callus. That location is getting burnt by the stomach acids, and some bodies, their body decides to handle it a certain way, and that's to build extra layers of skin. That's what GERD is. Stuff you never heard before, all day long. I don't say anything that you have heard before. And the way I learned to do that was I took everything that I was taught, and everything I'd heard, I just applied the opposite. I said, let's do the opposite, and it works. So you have a layer of skin that's being scorched by acid, and sometimes the body decides to put extra layers of skin. Why? So the acid doesn't eat all the way through and perforate the tissue. So when you see a polyp, you don't have to freak out. Just like with GERD, there's a pretty tiny percentage of times that polyp or the tissue in the esophagus could turn cancerous. It doesn't happen often, according to the number of people who have these. And your doctor takes these things out usually if they're small. I had a guy I was actually going to do some business with, and I didn't end up doing it, but he said his colon was just one wall of polyps, and he had had a lot of antibiotics. They're not cancerous in themselves. What it is just extra tissue, like the callus I have in my hand. I'm going to lie to you, I have no calluses. It's just extra skin to protect the underlying tissue. Don't make any more out of it than it is, and it's really nothing. So that's my story on calluses, and I'm pretty sure you never heard that one before. I'll be back with more a little bit later tomorrow. So keep checking out my YouTube channel. So long.